5 books and counting. The Tales from the Omni Vault continues to expand as a universe. Go ahead and check the links down in the description to get your copies today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni Viewer, and the properly edited videos are coming again, I promise you, but I'm still kinda riding the Godzilla Minus One wave, as well as the Godzilla Kong the New Empire wave, because apparently there's still quite a bit to talk about. And one thing I wanted to talk about in particular is how there seems to be a line being drawn separating Godzilla Minus One and the New Empire, which, you know, I would understand if you were just looking at the fact that they're clearly in very different genres, going with very different interpretations of the genre of kaiju eiga and the characters within. But it seems more like people are trying to draw the line of separating the movies into categories of good and bad, with Minus One obviously falling in the good category, which I think is deserved, and the New Empire falling into the bad category based solely on the trailer. Because, you know, at this point, nobody has actually seen that movie in its completed form. Moreover, it seems like I see a lot of people talking about how Godzilla Minus One is the way Godzilla should be. Godzilla is supposed to be a villainous, horrifying, antagonistic creature, not the anti-hero or full-blown hero that he's shown to be in the American movies. That's just a Hollywood bastardization of what Japan originally envisioned. Never mind all those movies that Japan made where Godzilla was the hero as well. No, Godzilla Minus One is what should be for Godzilla. And anything else, particularly that American stuff, is just trash. And I'm seeing this come from everywhere. There are some people saying it who, by their own admittance, aren't necessarily Godzilla fans. Like, maybe they've seen a couple movies, but they never counted themselves as fans until they saw Minus One, and now they're coming in and speaking like experts. Other people, of course, are longtime Godzilla fans who have seen all the movies and are very familiar with the genre, and they're still making this distinction, which I do still find to be very unusual. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, the heroic interpretation of Godzilla is not specific to the monsterverse. It was there in the original Japanese movies. In fact, my generation, and several generations before me even, grew up with that version of Godzilla. That is how we actually first met Godzilla. We met him as an anti-hero or a full-blown hero. Now that was due to a number of factors, one of them being those were the only movies we really had access to, because, well, those movies were the only ones that existed. The Showa movies were brought over to America, but only some of them were available all the time, while others you had to dig to the center of the earth to find. And the Heisei movies were only just starting to come out, but it was hard to tell when they would actually show up in America. But that's how we viewed Godzilla. We saw him in the same context that we saw Superman and Batman. He was a hero. He was someone to look up to. Maybe not someone we could necessarily aspire to be, you know, given every factor, but we could at least withdraw some lessons from him. And yes, we also saw the movies where he was a villain, but the fact that we knew him as a hero always was in play. So we always felt sympathy for him, or we always felt like the fight was a bit rigged when he lost to someone he clearly had more power than and really shouldn't have fallen to so easily. But, you know, that was just the way it was. As we grew older, of course, and we got access to more movies, and more importantly, the original cuts of certain movies, our understanding of Godzilla expanded, but the heroic version of him never quite went away. And indeed, Toho never quite got rid of it either. They bring Godzilla in to play whatever role they want him to play, which is not to say that he's just a hollow shell that they slap into whatever role they want. I've argued in the past that Godzilla does have a strong personality, but it's a personality that can, very surprisingly, fit into the role of both hero and villain. And like I said, Since we're talking about movies that come from Japan, if you're going to believe James Rolfe's champagne argument, which I really don't agree with because I feel like it's an oversimplification, but even if you take that as the gospel truth, well then, the movies where Godzilla is the hero are authentic if they come from Japan. The monsterverse just went with that because, well, they were planning on a franchise, even if they didn't necessarily have the monsterverse in mind way back in 2014, or even when it began development earlier than that. Well, they still had that vision of they wanted Godzilla to be the figurehead, and it's difficult to really sell people on a leading character who's also evil, especially in movies. Or maybe not evil, but antagonistic, certainly. So Godzilla was positioned as an anti-hero. He wasn't necessarily the Superman type who is out to intentionally save people. Some people might even not survive if they don't get out of the way, but ultimately his presence is good, which is how he's often depicted in Japan. In fact, I think that's the most frequent depiction of Godzilla, not as a hero and not as a straight villain, but as sort of a neutral to anti-heroic kind of figure, the lesser of two evils if there is more than one monster present. But then again, maybe all of that is subjective opinion. After all, I said that the reason so many of us view Godzilla in a more heroic light is because that's how we were introduced to him. And even if that is a legitimate interpretation, it's not the original intended interpretation, right? I mean, in that first movie, he was the embodiment of nuclear holocaust. His roots are as an antagonist. But is it really that simple? I've been giving this some thought, and I realized something. The idea that Godzilla can actually be the savior of mankind existed in this franchise as early as 1954. And I know some of you are going to hear that and think, did he misspeak or something? Because he just said 1954, which is when that original movie was released. And in that movie, Godzilla was the villain. He can't possibly be trying to tell me that Godzilla was envisioned as the savior of mankind or framed in a heroic light in that movie, is he? Well, he kind of is. And I'm going to present some evidence to back up that claim. Now, I'm drawing all of this straight from the movie itself. So if you think I'm making any of this up, or if you think that I'm basing this on something that's not in the movie, by all means, go back and watch the original, and I think you'll see where I'm getting this from. Nothing I'm about to say is actually stated outright in the film, but it is so heavily implied that I'm basically convinced that is what the intention was. I'm convinced this is what was supposed to be conveyed. And again, nothing in the original film states this outright, but then again, the film is a masterwork in subtle storytelling. So if it doesn't say something outright, that probably means the filmmakers figured you were smart enough to understand it on your own. I'm just going to state it outright here to make my case, but that doesn't mean I don't think you're smart enough. I'm just presenting what I see. Okay, so how can I possibly convince you that the idea of Godzilla as being beneficial and helpful to mankind existed all the way back in the original film where he was pretty much a villainous character? Well, it all comes down to Dr. Yamane. From the moment Yamane learns about Godzilla's existence, and all the way through basically the first half of the film, Yamane does not want Godzilla to be destroyed. Obviously, Godzilla has killed people up to that point. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that he is dangerous, even when he's not trying to be. But all the same, Yamane wants him preserved. He does not agree with the response of the Japanese government to just go ahead in guns blazing and try to kill this creature. In fact, when he and Ogata have a conversation over dinner, and Ogata says that he thinks it is a good idea to kill Godzilla, Yamane flips his lid and bans Ogata from the house before storming off. After this outburst, Emiko goes to check on her father as he's sulking in his study with that amazing Stegosaurus skeleton replica that I wish I had a copy of in my room. And she hears her father say, Godzilla should not be destroyed, he should be studied. Now, why does Yamane believe that? Even with everything that's happened, all the people that have died, all the destruction that's been caused up to that point, why does Yamane want Godzilla preserved? Well, because no matter how you look at it, Godzilla's existence is miraculous. First and foremost, Godzilla is a dinosaur. Dinosaurs are, of course, supposed to be extinct. And since this is well before we got all the crossovers and sequels and spin-offs that would show us just how many living dinosaurs there are in this universe, Godzilla's the only one we know about, which makes him unique. Furthermore, he's an unknown species of dinosaur, one we've never found evidence of before. So that raises all kinds of questions. Is he a species we just haven't found fossils of yet that survived all the way from prehistoric times to now? Is he a member of a new species that developed in a more contemporary setting? Whatever the answer to that question is, our understanding of the natural world and history is changed forever. That's just one side of the miracle, though. The other side is that Godzilla survived a nuclear blast. Now, if you're on the site of a nuclear blast, there are only 3 possible outcomes you can hope for. The first outcome is instant death. The second outcome is that you survive, but then you die a very slow and painful death over the course of years due to radiation poisoning. And the third outcome is that by some stroke of luck, you were in the right place at the right time where you not only avoided the shock wave, avoided the radiation, but you also got out quickly enough that you didn't feel any of the effects. But that's not necessarily guaranteed, of course. None of those answers, however, none of those outcomes apply to Godzilla. Clearly, he's not dead. He doesn't appear to be dying. And the blast clearly affected him, but it didn't kill him or harm him. It actually made him stronger in the long run. So how is that possible? How did he survive something that would kill basically everything else? If we could understand that, if we could understand the secret to his survival, maybe, just maybe, what we learn could be applied to us. Bear in mind, 1954, Cold War is happening. Nuclear tests are going off left, right, and center. Why? Because the USA and USSR are basically butting heads in a Cold War for supremacy of the globe. And they're also stockpiling nuclear weapons up to the heavens and beyond. So the prospect of nuclear holocaust was looking more likely with each passing day. And there's no way to survive nuclear holocaust, no way to treat exposure to radiation. Unless, of course, we can figure something out from Godzilla. Maybe the secrets we learn from him can lead to a treatment. Maybe it can even lead to an inoculation that would prevent the human race from even being affected by radiation. Who knows? The possibilities are endless until we actually study him. The problem is, we're not studying him. We're trying to kill him, which is just making him angry and getting him to kill us instead. But still, right there, in that original movie, we see the potential for Godzilla to be the savior of mankind. As such, this is why I feel that there's really no need to be lambasting the monsterverse version of Godzilla purely on the fact that it's presenting Godzilla as a hero, as opposed to Godzilla Minus One that presents him as a villain. If you want to critique the monsterverse for any particular reason, I mean, feel free to do so, but that's not a legitimate reason if you ask me. Just saying Godzilla's not a hero, well, that's a demonstrably false statement. And, as I also just demonstrated, the idea of him being a potential hero, a potential benefit to the human race, was right there at the beginning. You know, one of the things I love about doing these kinds of videos, and one of the reasons why I think the original Godzilla will always remain the best movie in the whole franchise, is because every time there's a new Godzilla movie that comes out, regardless of whether it's good or bad, regardless of whether Godzilla is the hero or the villain, regardless of any other detail, recently at least, there's always been something about that movie that causes me to go back to the original film and extract something from it that I didn't even know was there before. And yet, once I realize it's there, it's so obvious, I'm amazed it didn't bite me much sooner. That's amazing that a movie that's dangerously close to being 7 decades old at this point still has layers to it that are yet to be uncovered. Who knows what else might be extracted from this film in the years to come. And that's difficult to say about any movie, let alone a kaiju one. So, the way I see it, there's room for both versions of Godzilla. I think Minus One is a masterpiece, of course. Nothing's going to change that. I don't know if Godzilla x Kong the New Empire is going to be good or bad, because I've only seen the one trailer. I'm hoping that at the very least it's a fun ride. Is it going to be as deep and thoughtful and emotional as Minus One? Probably not. But does it need to be in order to be enjoyable? Not necessarily. It just needs to be entertaining. So I would say there's room for both interpretations of Godzilla, because when you get right down to it, both interpretations of Godzilla are part of his roots. At least that's the way I interpret it. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni viewer signing off. Thank you all for watching. Now be sure to head down to the description to check us out on other platforms, as well as find links to the 5 current books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.